It's now my pleasure to introduce a member who is well known throughout Maryland Wing, a former Spots cadet and current Government Relations Advisor and Legislative Squadron Commander, Captain Wyatt Hartman.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited that all of you were able to join us. And for those that'll be viewing it later, I'm excited that you've come back to hear what we have going on in Maryland Wing. I've been in Civil Air Patrol for going on almost about 9 years. I continue in my service as the Legislative Squadron Commander, as Major Mullen already indicated. While we continue to go through, I just wanted to discuss a little bit of my process of how I started. I started as a cadet and continued to go through serving. This will be my 7th or 8th legislative day nationally this year as we continue to prep. And some of our previous accomplishments in Maryland Wing, currently we're holding 23 members in the legislative squadron, which we're hoping to grow, which we'll discuss a little bit later about some of our state initiatives that we're hoping to start and sort of further this year. As we continue to move forward, we also have had great success at our prior legislative days. Our teams are normally well stacked with individuals that have a multitude of experience, as well as new members who are interested in government and in continuing to serve Civil Air Patrol in a way that they're able to give back to our other members. We've also had several meetings with our local legislators, so that's part of the focus that I plan to take as the Government Relations Advisor, to try and sort of incorporate our state legislators and get them a little bit more involved with a greater understanding of who we are and what we're attempting to accomplish, and which we'll talk about that here in a couple minutes. But the short vision, I'm hoping to add 2 assistants here shortly. So I wanted to go through later on, and I'll explain in my attempts to garner the support for those positions, because I intend to split them up sort of into a federal focus and then a state focus, where we're able to tackle our multiple missions moving forward in a more direct way, with a little bit more of a direct focus. We have a multitude of cadets that have also continued to assist us for multiple years, who will be continuing in their tenure. So one of our OICs from last year, Cadet Captain Brown, will also be continuing with our team to assist us this year for Legislative Day. Next slide, please. So I know most of you, I'm sure, are at least semi-familiar with the National Legislative Day process. Obviously, it'll be a little bit different this year. I don't have 100% of the information for how we're going to go ahead and conduct it, but it will be virtual. So our process for that is going to be handled a little bit differently. And so part of our training will also be conducted a little bit differently, because we do have our training normally at Wing headquarters. We started an in-person training last year to allow us a little bit more face-to-face time and go through exactly how we intend to articulate our points to the legislators. So when we go through this year, we'll be talking about a little bit of the challenges with the virtual platform, but also how we're going to overcome those and sort of how we intend to conduct those meetings, which it'll be a little bit similar when we talk about the state process and what we're attempting to do there. But our teams are normally selected in advance. We'll be getting ready to send out our Google form through the Wing email to try and garner that support for this year to establish our teams. And then we go through with our selection process. And this year we'll have our cadet OIC, and then we'll also have our senior team leads and our cadet team leads as we continue to try and break things up to garner a greater focus on the members of Congress that each individual is assigned. And I talked a little bit about that training a little bit ago, but as we continue to go through, we'll be focusing a little bit more this year on the virtual side, but while still maintaining the training for how we would be conducting it in person as well, because we're going to use that training not only for how we're going to conduct these meetings at the federal level, but also how we'll go ahead and go through and conduct them at the state level. So another good tool, because there's been several items that a few of our members who are interested in government but may not know who the representative is or who the current senators are. And normally we want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of who we're talking to. So that way we are able to sort of focus some of our points on items that they will sort of resonate with them. So I included a link there where you're able to view the elected officials for our state. When you go through and find, there's a drop-down menu. You'll find our state here in Maryland, and then it'll go through and it'll list it out. There's two separate sections, one for the Senate and then one for the House, obviously, that you'll be able to go through and then find those members. And then if we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so our state, this is the one that I wanted to focus on a little bit more and spend a little bit more time with. So the photo that is in the top right-hand corner was a meeting that we had with State Senator Elfreth. And it was one of our first in-person meetings that we've had, to my knowledge, quite some time with our members. So part of our goal is to sort of get our squadrons a little bit more involved, not only at our state level, but also with their local levels and in their counties, as we try and get a little bit more recognition, a little bit more presence within our state, within the counties. We want to make sure that we're getting the right message out, but also that we're getting a message out, because part of what we have struggled with a little bit previously is in our state. So we do very well at the national level when we go and we attend our legislative day. But some of the items that we really need to make sure that we're focusing on is how we interact and conduct ourselves with the state, because we definitely need to try and continue to move forward. As one item is, especially with our Bay Patrol and our several other missions, we have a funding level that is significantly decreased compared to the wings around us. So part of my goal is to get us to a point where not only do we attempt to posture ourselves to sort of increase our state funding, but also that they know who we are and we have a presence, that it isn't just, we have one conversation, we get them involved in the legislative squadron, but also that we keep up with them and sort of give them an update each year, like we do at the national level, to make sure that they're on the same page and they know exactly what their constituents are doing, because they find I definitely want to have our squadrons more involved in order to have the same way that we conducted at the national level, where we split it up to have the individuals that are the specific constituents of that congressman. We want to also do for our local levels, so to make sure that we have that representation and they're able to ask specific questions about items that are actually going on in their area. So part of the goals with that, I talked about the positions a little bit earlier with the separation, but that position will specifically be focusing on how we're going to move forward in the state and then assist in setting up these teams so that we're able to have a state legislative day, which I know a few other states have conducted and they've gone very well. But as we continue to move forward, that's what we'll be doing. So we'll need a larger number, and we always have an increased presence each year when we send out our Google form to get the teams together for National Legislative Day. So the goal is to have our state legislative day sort of be a stepping stone to prepare members how we're going to conduct ourselves on a national level, because I think that it'll find it easier for us to continue to talk to the individuals who are a little bit more familiar with where we are, and then use those individuals who do well at the state level to sort of stepping stone up over to the national level. I also included a link there to identify the legislators in Maryland. So as you go through on that site, it also breaks down both chambers as we continue to locate them. And so part of what has been conducted previously is we've only had few and far between meetings with select individuals that we may or may not have had a prior relationship, but we really want to do this same sort of storm the Capitol type of thing. So we have all of us head down, communicate with them in Annapolis, which obviously that's a little bit difficult currently with where we are with COVID and multiple other items, but we intend to use the same sort of virtual platform that we'll be using for National Legislative Day. And then as we continue to communicate with them, another good note that was put together by the National Government Relations team, I added a little communication block there, because our communication, especially with our state legislators, we have very good relationships with most of our congressmen. So most of them all know who we are. They have a prior relationship with us. We normally meet with the same people each year. Those relationships have already been established and have been built. And so I'm comfortable moving forward with where we are there and continuing to sort of develop that relationship to get to a point where maybe we might be able to meet with the actual congressman or the senator instead of, only one of the staffers. There's several other wings that have gotten to a point where they have a sort of personal relationship or connection with those individuals. And one good thing with our state legislature is it'll be a little bit easier to communicate directly with those that represent us. So in that communication block, I know that I sort of veered off there, but they discuss how we're going to communicate with them. So there's a certain level of professionalism that obviously we respect when we're going through and having these discussions with the individuals. So we want to make sure that, especially when we have a large number of our members that quite possibly will be communicating with them, these team leads essentially, we want to make sure that we standardize and have the same sort of outline when we go through and conduct these meetings to get ready. If you could go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about our upcoming opportunities here in the state. And so we have these two government relations assistant positions, which I mentioned previously, and then our cadet positions. Part of one of my goals is to really get our cadets involved in government relations. That's where I got my start. All of my experience with Civil Air Patrol in government relations initially, besides 1 year, was as a cadet. And I assisted and continued to move through and was the cadet OIC, prepping things for the state. I assisted multiple other wings in their meetings as we went out and conducted things. Multiple of them were with Colorado, California, and several other wings. But the cadets really are the shining stars in these meetings. So my goal is to sort of have cadets that are capable and can handle these meetings, sort of being in the forefront, handling themselves, actually being the direct communicators as they continue to go through. So I think that as we have increase in cadet participation, not only will it be easier for us to prove part of our point, especially with cadet programs that we're continuing to develop the youth, that also shows, that they are our shining stars, essentially. And most of the time, in my experience, the individuals that we're communicating to normally are more interested in what the cadets have been experiencing and what they have going on than what has been happening sort of on the senior side. Obviously, a lot of the business end has to come from the senior side, but most of the meeting normally is conducted with the cadets. So we go through and we do that training to make sure that the cadets are prepared for that. But we'll have multiple. Each one of the team leads will have a cadet team lead, and then we'll also have the senior team lead like we've done in the past. And so they'll have the responsibility for each one of the representatives that they're assigned. They're actually going to be the ones to go through and follow through all of the communication process with them. So our timeline as we get ready to start this, in about a couple weeks, we'll have the Google form that's going to be coming out through the wing email to have our members sign up to get ready for this year's National Legislative Day. And then we'll also have before that, we'll have the senior position that will come out for the government relations advisor assistant for sort of the federal focus, because they'll be the ones assisting me in helping to get everything together for this year with federal, especially with the differences in how it'll be changing with the virtual session. We want to make sure that we have everything ironed out and together. So we're starting that process a little bit earlier than we have in previous years, but we want to make sure that we're definitely on track with getting everything together so that way we're prepared. Go ahead to the next slide. So I wanted to see real quick if anybody has any questions, and then afterwards I also have my contact information and that kind of thing that I did want to share for those that may be interested in assisting with government relations at the wing this year. But before we get there, does anyone have any questions about anything that we're doing?
So if you do have questions that you want to say verbally, you can go ahead and unmute yourself at this time.
Okay, if we can go ahead and move to the next slide then. Okay, so on this contact information slide, I have my wing email there. That's the one that I'm going to be using, obviously, to conduct everything that we'll be doing with government relations as we continue to move forward. So if you have any interest in any of the items that we discussed earlier, whether it be simply assisting with this year's legislative day, or if you're interested in that government relations position that we talked about, like I said, the announcement will be coming out in the coming weeks, or if you'd like to request any additional information, feel free to send me a note. And then if you have any questions about preparation for whether it be cadet or the senior positions for any of either the activity or for as we continue to move forward with the assistance, feel free to give me a shout and let me know.
Cam Hartman, you do have looks like one question in the chat. Can you provide any guidance to Wings with details about going virtual next year in 2021?
Hey Wyatt, this is John Swain talking. How are you?
Doing well, sir. How about yourself?
Good. That was my comment. We're gonna be getting out guidance. It's not a question, but we will get out guidance to all the wings by about the 20th of this month. We're going through it right now to make sure we've included everything. We'll run it by the region government relations advisors, and then we'll get it out to you and the wing commander here shortly to see what we can do to help you for next year.
Okay, excellent. That sounds great. We're definitely excited for it, and like I said, we're getting ready to start that preparation process to get our teams ready, and we'll continue to train the same way that we have previously, just with the expectation that it'll be virtual. So we'll still be prepared, and we're ready to handle it.
Cool. And I really like your plan for the future. How you're going to divide up responsibilities and how you're looking at using cadets. That's just exceptional. So we're going to, I know Kimberly Frady and I will probably steal that from you to put in as a best practice for our government relations advisors, but great ideas. So look forward to helping you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. That's great. I appreciate it.
Okay, question from Lieutenant Colonel Strong. Is it possible to get training for speaking with the local politicians?
Yes, absolutely. So earlier when we were discussing sort of our state opportunities, part of my goal is to use our similar training that we have utilized for our National Legislative Day to also use when we're talking to our local government. So not only do I intend for us to be speaking with just our state legislators in Annapolis, but I'd also like to get our unit commanders involved with our communities, so our county government, city government, etc. So part of that we'll go through, and I will go ahead and put something together for that. That's an excellent point, and we'll go ahead. I'll have another virtual sort of session that I'll put together for the best practices for communication. There's in one of the previous slides, there's a link to the National Government Relations. They put a great thing together for some of our email communication, but we'll also have discussions about the types of items that we want to focus on at the wing level, like sort of our hot button items type of thing. So I'll definitely want to speak with the wing command team on that. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put together, I'll go ahead and write myself a note now, but we'll go ahead and put together a list of the sort of hot button items that we want to make sure that we hit when we're discussing things with them. And then obviously focusing on our sort of elevator speeches, because normally we only have a couple moments when we're talking with them, but sort of our personal take on how we view Civil Air Patrol, which is one of the items that we focus on each year as well with when we discuss it with CLA. Like last year, I went and talked with them about how we communicate while we're at National Legislative Day, which I'll be able to use some of that stuff that we discussed to sort of bring to the local level. But absolutely, I'll go ahead and write myself a note, and I'll talk with the command team and get something together for that. And then I'll go ahead and get I'll send a note out when we get that stuff together, because I'd like to do that with each of as many of the unit commanders that we can. Maybe when we have one of the wing drills, we might be able to have just a short conversation with everyone, maybe at one of our wing drills, and then I can have a little bit more in-depth conversation for those that want to stick around afterwards. Does anyone have anything else? Any other questions? Okay, awesome. I really appreciate everybody joining in. I'm excited for what we have planned. And like I said, if anybody has any questions or anything that they'd like to discuss with me outside of the group, my email is there, and I'm happy to communicate with anybody as we continue to move forward. And I'm excited for what we have coming in the future.
I just want to thank everybody for attending. Captain Hartman's going to stay online a little bit, but this concludes the formal portion. So if you want to drop off and get some extra time before the next session, you can do that. Otherwise, you can stay on and have a semi-offline conversation with Captain Hartman. Oh, one other thing, I'm going to be posting a link in the chat to the session survey. Okay, that link is posted, so if you could fill that out, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey, Captain, it's Lieutenant Colonel Strong here. Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. One of the things I don't want to get behind on this, we did an awful lot with Montgomery County government this go around with COVID.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to lose any of those relationships that we developed, especially for the first time the county actually, in my opinion, knows who we are. So I'd like to hit that iron while it's still hot. And there's also, I'm a municipal engineer consultant, so I speak with a lot of the town managers, and I don't want to run behind, lose those relationships. They don't know me as a Civil Air Patrol member. They know me as the municipal engineer. But a lot of our conferences or a lot of our meetings now are held virtually with the town commissioners and mayors and such. So I think it would be an opportunity to go ahead and kind of get our, say, hey, this is who we are. It doesn't take any travel that way, but we can get some presentations possibly with maybe a cadet and a senior member type situation, just to introduce who we are.
Yes, I think that would be excellent. That's definitely one of the items. I missed talking about it in this presentation, but when I had my initial interview with the wing command team, that was one of the items that we discussed, that we wanted to make sure that we sort of focus on some of these items and the relationships that we've been able to develop through the tough times from this COVID period, but that we want to make sure that we don't lose any ground on this. So that's an excellent point, and that's part of why I want to make sure that we get a little bit more local participation in government relations as well. And I want to, those types of meetings I don't necessarily have to be at, but I want to sort of communicate with the individuals that plan on doing it, so we can sort of go through the plan and focus on the specific items that we want to hit. And then if they have any questions, I want to make sure that, all of the folks that are going through to do it, that they have my cap.gov email to make sure that any questions or anything that those individuals might have, that we can get that answered. And if it's a question that I can't answer, talk to the command team and get an answer out to maintain those relationships. That's an excellent point.
Okay, thanks. You're doing a great job. Keep on plugging away.
Thank you. I appreciate it, sir.